Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is FrancisP, and I'm a recovery coach and personal development coach based outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And today I'm back with another video, and this one's about different pathways to recovery. And just for, we'll start from the premise that you decide, you want to get into recovery. You are done with your, drug or substance of choice. Suppose you caught a DUI and you want to stop drinking, or you're done, you want to get off of fentanyl. You've seen all the horrors that it's wreaking, all these different things. You've had an overdose, yada, yada, yada. And it's easy to say yada, 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 like I live and eat and breathe this stuff, so I guess it's not as traumatic for me. But honestly, the reality is for most people with hard drugs, it's just death is where you're headed. Either you're going to be in jail or you're going to be dead. At the very least, you're going to be like homeless on the streets, all these different things before you get there. At least if you ever seen Kensington, Philadelphia, if not, look it up. That's where things are at in 2024. So for argument's sake, suppose, okay, you've seen the light, you decide, I want to get into recovery. I want to exit out of this life I've been leading. Where do I start? And I was at this point in one point in my life as well, where I had to ask myself, how is it that I get in recovery? I thought it was like a far off dream. I had gotten involved in the drugs when I was very young. I've been in recovery and addiction and stuff since a teenager. And eventually, I've been on opiates for so long and eventually graduated, to heroin and things like that, that I'm like, what is the exit? How do I get out of this? How do I get off of this? And I would look around at other people who weren't addicted like that was some dream that I had, that one day maybe I could hope to achieve. So I asked myself, how is it that my personal pathway, is a mixture of things like smart recovery, a mixture of therapy and, cognitive behavioral therapy skills, and MAT like Suboxone, which now I weaned off of the Suboxone early on because at that point I didn't even think I could be on it on probation. I'd caught in a charge, whole story that eventually sometime I'll get into, but so I quickly got off of the Suboxone before I got put on the probation, so that way I didn't catch any trouble from that. And here I am now. It's be 9 years this summer, in recovery. But so for different people, there's going to be different pathways. That's just the pathway I've taken. And a lot of times I don't spend a lot of time sharing my experience. Eventually maybe we'll get into that. But mostly the reason I make these videos the way I do with this presentation style is just to convey this information so that we can kind of go through it. So we'll start with, people are unique individuals. What works well for one person may not work as well for another. And just as there are so many different diverse types of people out there, different people are going to vibe with, they're going to resonate with different pathways to recovery. It doesn't mean that you can't be successful. Suppose you're forced into one, you're forced into treatment, and you don't really vibe with it, but here you are, okay? How you can still make the most of any pathway to recovery. But for some people, there's going to be things that just, work better or they resonate with for whatever reason, or maybe because of their life situation, things like that. So what are some of the different pathways to recovery? And also we should keep in mind, our path is not the only path. So just because something worked for me or worked for others does not mean that it's going to work for everybody else, or it's the singular path. Oh, I did 12 steps and that worked for me, so anything else is bullshit. That's not how this works, okay? And this is backed up by like SAMHSA, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Like all the guidelines say that there needs to be multiple pathways to recovery because there's so many different types of people. So we also must not discount the pathways of others. So at the same time, the people that 12 steps, whatever, worked really well for them, fantastic. I can't discount that. For different people, they're going to vibe with different programs, whether it's, smart recovery, 12 steps, recovery dharma, like Buddhist recovery, celebrate recovery, some other faith-based organization, a secular organization, other mutual self-help support group, natural recovery, all these different things. If our current path isn't working though, we should adjust. So if I've been trying something and it hasn't worked, and I did 12 steps, I did all these, I was in treatment throughout my life so many different times. I tried a lot of different things until a certain combination helped enable me to get to where I had enough distance behind me to truly, embrace recovery. So what are some of the recovery pathways? So first we have like inpatient residential treatment. For a lot of people, that's what they think of, as far as the level of substance use for things like heroin addiction. Like honestly, when I was an IV heroin user, I didn't think that I was that bad. I thought that that's how most people are, like heroin users, right? No, apparently not. And so when I would go in for an assessment, it was like inpatient. And especially early on, it was you get whatever we recommend for you or you leave. You don't choose what level of care pathway to recovery. That's it. Like you're doing this. So a lot of times that could be inpatient for a month, multiple months, these different things. Residential, like you're living there. You're not going back to your family. You don't have access to your phone. Now that there are these different things, like you couldn't even really barely call people. Like you're not in jail. There's no bars keeping you in, but you aren't left to your own devices. A lot of times that's what we need, depending on where we're at in our, addiction. Now you have outpatient. So below that, you might have actually there'd be like partial hospitalization programs, which I probably should have put on there, where like you're there most of the time during the day, but maybe you go someplace to sleep at night. And, so you might be living in either a recovery house or at home, and then, but you're there like 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday. Some places you might be going back to a place that has nursing staff, on nursing care on staff. Other places now below that, like outpatient, IOP, and GOP. So IOP is like intensive outpatient. A lot of times you might be going to multiple groups, or at least a group a week, plus individuals on top of that. So maybe that's, depending on if you're working and different things like that, how many hours a week that you're going to be attending treatment is going to be a big factor. So suppose you're attending basically 9 hours of treatment a week. If you have several 3-hour groups and some individuals and things like that, it takes up a lot of your time. So when I said for different people, based on different things you have in your life and different responsibilities, I get it. When you tell somebody what a job and kids and different things, you need to go inpatient is what they recommend. They're like, I can't take off for a month. I can't leave my family. I can't do this. And sometimes it really is best, but I get it when people, they're not trying to, they don't resonate with that pathway, right? So outpatient, IOP, you're there multiple hours a week. General outpatient, it's several hours a week. Now, not to say you can't succeed in this. If you're absolutely determined that I'm going to make the most of this with like a general outpatient and MAT and some recovery support groups, like I did literally coming off of heroin, and I've done inpatient, I've done different things, but my exit, my into recovery was outpatient based. Like if you're determined, you can make it work. You can sit there in an inpatient or IOP all day with your arms crossed in group, not really soaking anything up, and you can spend all the hours you're there, but if you're not really absorbing it, if it's not clicking, if you're not trying to resonate with it, good luck. You're just going to keep repeating this process over and over and over again. Eventually, when you want to get off the carousel, that's when you can make any of these work, okay? Now, beneath that, we have like MAT only. So suppose there's some clinics that you're just getting like Suboxone or methadone. Now, methadone, with that, you're really going to get groups and individual outpatient, like one-on-one therapy. But there's some places that are just Suboxone, or you just have a prescriber for Suboxone, you're getting it online, whatever, okay? So now with the MAT only, at least I can address the cravings and the physical withdrawal part of it, but really you'd want something to address some of the mental factors. So example, for me, I was on MAT, but I was going to Smart Recovery, learning skills from that. I had a therapist at the time, like learning skills from that, trying to incorporate, talking to them about the stuff from learning Smart Recovery with cognitive behavioral therapy. Like putting all these different pieces together. A lot of times in inpatient, that's kind of what they're trying to do, is really schedule your time. Plus, if you're at the point where you literally can't be left to your own devices, because if you're left to your own devices, you will overdose, you'll put yourself in risky situations. Like, bro, you can't be in charge of your own body. Like at some point that should make you wake up that, oh my God, if I'm making my own choices for myself, I'll walk myself off a cliff. Like somebody else literally needs to make my choices. That was kind of eye-opening for me, that like somebody else needs to like steer your car for you because you can't manage it. Here we go. We should get a sense of where we're at. Beneath that, you have natural recovery. Suppose you have this epiphany, oh my God, my life is unmanageable. And for example, my own father had natural recovery off of methamphetamine. It's not a lot of stuff I share, but like this stuff happens. I've seen it in my own life, that the guy literally decided I'm not doing that anymore after he had got introduced to it as a teenager. And then later on in life is like, I'm done this, and then stops. And then, over the course of several days, went through it. And then, like, eventually he was sitting there in 12-step groups with me. He was taking me to treatment and started learning some of the recovery skills through that. Like, oh my God, this is the part I didn't get. And he really embraced that. But for him, initially, it was natural recovery. Like somebody just white knuckles it. And, I guess early, the people that were building the 12 steps, Bill Wilson and stuff, I guess they were, white knuckling it. That's like natural recovery until they developed a group. Beneath that, there you go, mutual support group. So a group of people who are also in recovery. Now, there's different groups for everything, whether it's grief, recovery, whatever you're going through. I tell people odds are there's a group of people who are discussing that, who can support each other through it. So you have mutual support groups, and that would be like the 12-step group, Smart Recovery, Recovery Dharma, Refuge Recovery, Celebrate Recovery. Like there's so many. I'm sure I'm missing lots of them, but these things happen. Spiritual and faith-based, and that could be either through like your church, different things like that. I've had clients who also, besides going to therapy and besides even attending maybe another mutual support group or going to a group at their church, and they actually made phenomenal connections with other people in recovery through their church that helped them out in all kinds of different areas of life. Like the connections that you make in recovery, building that community, that support around you is so invaluable. Next you have the criminal justice system. Suppose you're in jail and now here you are and you're in therapeutic community or what have you, and you're trying to learn recovery stuff. But like, once again, you can make the most of it. Suppose I'm forced into inpatient, I'm forced into jail. Well, I can either sit there and cross my arms and not want to listen and just wait till the day I get out. Like, oh man, I'm going to get high as soon as I get out, and just keep doing the same stuff again till I'm back in jail, back in inpatient, or I can be like, let me make the most of this. Like, what are these people talking about? What are you trying to say? And then once I actually started trying to like use the skills they were talking about, I'm like, oh my God, this shit works. It actually works. Now normally this is how I speak. I'm like trying to keep this more informative, but in my actual sessions with clients, things are much more relaxed. I keep shit bleak because it really is. Like, I'm not sure if, like I said, look up Kensington, Philadelphia, but like this is where we're at in 2024. It's only getting worse. It's only, if I guess the trajectory is more people dying and overdosing, like that's literally the way that we're heading. So last but not least, we have all like alternative treatments, and these can be all kinds of different things. From people use herbal remedies, like from iboga, to I would even consider something like coaching an alternative treatment, because it's outside of normal. Depending on how it's done outside of normal health insurance, it's not counseling, so it would be essentially an alternative. A lot of times you'll have peer, other people in recovery support mixed into this, but I think that people who are true, determined coaches and understand the process and have guided people through it and help guide people through it, that's its own kind of form of treatment, and could be used in conjunction with these other things as well. So many individuals, and I got this, actually, this is from the SAMHSA, once again, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration website, okay, about different pathways to recovery. And says, many individuals try the wrong pathway 1, 2, 3, 4, or more times before achieving a state of long-term recovery. Different avenues work for different people depending on their addictions, the supports they need, the barriers that they face, the places they're in their lives, and other factors. So like I was saying, right, depending on what you're addicted to, are you drinking just a couple of times a week and, your spouse or partner isn't happy with it, or are you smoking crack, have you sold all of your family's property in order to fund your addiction, like where you're at, this level of support you need. Do you have any support? Maybe for some people, literally being able to go to that inpatient is the best thing you could do, because actually the area or the house that you're in isn't helpful to your recovery. So you really need to kind of remove yourself from that situation. And unfortunately, that happens a lot, where literally you need to get out of your environment to be able to recover. Then you can make the choice after getting that time where you want to come back to after that. Maybe you've built the skills to be able to go back to that house, or maybe you need to go someplace else. The barriers they face. So depending on also things like insurance, things like funding, different things. What your life looks like, the place they are in their lives, what your responsibilities are, other factors. I've literally had somebody tell me they couldn't go to inpatient, or they at least couldn't go to alcohol detox because they had a cat. Now, granted, they lived alone. They were like a widow and things, but you could potentially have somebody cat sit, and usually detox isn't super long, maybe a week, but literally, I can't do that. I have a cat. So there's a lot of times people have reasons why they can't, but there's different levels of these factors and responsibilities. And I encourage people, have honest conversation with yourself. Is this really a barrier, or am I making it a barrier? I think once we can have these honest conversations, if am I just avoiding something, or is this too much for me, and like be able to actually process that and sit with it and come away with a reasonable assessment of it, the better in all these different areas. Like having honest conversations with yourself. All right, because it's hard to BS yourself. I mean, you could try, but some part of you knows. So if you're unsure what level of care you require, what path to try first, A, if you have insurance, you can call your insurance and ask where to get an evaluation. So literally, if you have the card, you can call the card number. If not, ask your employer, call the state, whoever, county assistance that you're at, then ask them what your number is, or ask them what insurance you have. Call the insurance. Now, they're going to want to give you somebody's telephone number and just get you off the phone. That's not what you're trying to do. You're going to ask, can you call and help me get an appointment or an intake or something someplace? And they're going to keep putting you on hold and call multiple places. Sit there. I usually take my phone, put it on speaker if I'm trying to call help a client or something, because I'm not trying to sit there with my phone against my ear while I'm on hold for 20 minutes or however long at a time. But eventually they'll come back, and they're literally just going on their website the same as you could, and look through a provider list to see the list of providers. That information is usually outdated. It's old. It's telephone numbers are wrong, all kinds of doctors have moved, all kinds of different stuff. So call them and ask them. Some places, sometimes they have an idea of where to send you, the person's phone, maybe. But if you're unwilling or unable to seek medical help, like through your insurance and all, or if you don't have insurance, at least seek support through your local community group. So once again, that's like mutual self-help support groups. Sometimes there's different county funding if you don't have insurance now that you can get in a program temporarily, okay? Now it might be harder to pay for things like MAT, but it can be done. When I was on Suboxone, literally it wasn't covered by insurance. That's how long ago, 2015. It was not covered by insurance. I had to pay out of pocket for it using GoodRx coupons and all. Like there's ways to do these things. Sometimes it takes time, it takes resources, but you can make a list for yourself of the things I need. Okay, how do I address the physical stuff? How do I address my mental needs? How do I put these different parts of recovery? Who are my supports? What support groups can I go to? What are local community organizations I can go to? I think even in Pennsylvania, you call like 1-800-RECOVERY, and they'll give you information on how to seek recovery. That might be nationwide. You try that 1-800-RECOVERY, but like there's Google stuff. Most people have a phone, right? Like Google in your area, and just start calling, making calls, asking people information. If they don't know, ask them who else you can call, pointing to who can find out. So let's see, mutual self-help support groups. And there's that list of groups. Sometimes I get ahead of myself in these slides. It's what I do, because most time like this, none of this is edited. It's off the top. But like I said, I could sit here and talk about this stuff all day, every day. I live, eat, and breathe it. It's what I do. My life is pretty much just always revolved around drugs in one way or another. And now it's just recovery. So like Alcoholics Anonymous, the OG, like I said, Bill Wilson and them, they were sitting there figuring this stuff out in the room together. After that came Narcotics Anonymous. And also before that, they actually had sober circles in Native American communities. Like actual, if you can understand the history, at least of like recovery, even in America, let alone in other countries. But, like the stuff's been around. But Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, they're like early 1900s, Smart Recovery, which branched off of actually like rational recovery and things like that. I'm a huge proponent of that. I've been a facilitator for them. I can give you their whole program by mouth. Let's see, Celebrate Recovery. They're a Christian organization. If you're very Christian, Jesus-based, things like that. I've known people that have found great success through Celebrate Recovery, and they also lived, eat, and breathe that program. Now I just knowledgeable about drugs, recovery, all this stuff, but like person super into Celebrate Recovery. Also Recovery Dharma, and there's like Refuge Recovery, I believe, is the other one. I'm not up to date on which is the most current version of the organization, because they had split off or they were different organizations. Sorry if I'm messing that up. But Recovery Dharma is a Buddhist Buddhist mutual self-help support group organization that has their own program to help people in addiction with recovery. And this list is not exhaustive. So there's other programs out there. There's other things you can find out, especially like a lot of these things, they're free. So if you don't have insurance or don't want to put it through your insurance for whatever reason, different things like that, these are options for you that you can seek out. There's nothing stopping you. They have like online meetings. So literally, if you have an internet connection, if you're watching this video, then there's nothing stopping you. There's no barrier. Maybe your time. Are you afraid that people are going, no, you're going to a meeting? Do I have to hide in a closet? Maybe like, what is my actual barrier to doing this other than just, I don't want to? If it's I don't want it, to me, that's not good enough. So I need to have actual barriers. Otherwise, let's do this stuff. It's where you got to get to if you want to really get through recovery. But different pathways can work together. So I'll take, the groups, the family, friends, and my support, for people that have them, therapy and coping skills. And that also helped me, my relationships, my family, friends. Because like, one of the first things that happens for people in recovery, like the improvement that you notice in your life, is your relationship with your family and friends. Like you start getting along better with people, and that is really the first noticeable thing. Other things like, suppose your credit, finances, things like that might take a little bit, even your health, to improve for a little while, but a lot of times people, the way you interact with others and your ability to relate to others improves for sure. Let's see. So then you combine the therapy, coping skills, and your habits, routines, your self-care, and your environment. It's like your daily habits, how you spend your morning, and how do you spend, like, what does your routine look like for you? Maybe you don't have a routine, and that's a fly by the seat of your pants. And to me, especially if you deal with things like anxiety, that's anxiety inducing. If I have habits and routines and structure in my life, and I'm not just kind of winging it all the time, I have less anxiety, so I have less feeling the need to cope with anxiety by using substances. It's like this whole process works together, right? And the clients I've had that have multiple years in recovery doing really well have solid habits and routines. They practice their self-care. They have these conversations with themselves. They know when they're starting to get burnt out. I've had clients who, when I first explained burnout, they're like, what is burnout? I gave them like a worksheet for it, and at first it didn't click, and they're like, oh my God, actually, like I'm doing all these things. Like this, I have all these symptoms of burnout, and learning to recognize themselves in yourself when things that you're doing are even out of character. You just don't even feel right. You feel more irritable, more drained, tired. The list goes on and on, but not practicing your self-care can lead to these physical things and mental, which once again, for people with substance use, can lead to wanting to use. Well, I can try and fix my mental and physical right now with a substance, like that's just a quick go-to for people. So by working on these things, we can eliminate the urges. We can eliminate the problems that we're trying to cope with, that we're masking with by using substances, changes to our environment. So once again, like I said, if your living environment, the place that you're at, is literally not opposite of your recovery or not conducive to recovery, suppose you're living with people that are actively using. If I'm living in a crack house, it might be hard to recover from crack, but it's not to say it's impossible, but it would be a lot tougher. So maybe I need to change my environment as well, or you're just in a toxic relationship, toxic environment. There's a million and one different things. Just like all these diverse, different, unique people, there's some unique situations that are a mix of all these different things. I've had so many different types of clients and situations and learning. That's why also I don't structure these videos like in some like particular order, because everybody's at such a different place that what they need right now might not be step one. This is like a step one kind of thing. Maybe people have been doing acceptance stuff, they're later on in the recovery, or I'm doing urge coping or stuff like all these different, where you're at in this process. I didn't want to just lay it out, chop, 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 chop. So, we're kind of working through this, and I figure that people can look through the list of videos and figure out which ones resonate with where they're currently at. Maybe go back and watch stuff that was from earlier in the recovery just to kind of shore up on it, But how long are we making this video? We're at 23 minutes. Okay, that's what we do. But like I said, I could sit here and just talk about this. I make these slides, so it gives me like a reference point, but this is what we do. So, but all this adds up to recovery. And I have another video. It's like my building blocks to recovery, because all these pieces really need to be in place. And if you're not working on them, that's when, even if you have the best intentions, you're like, I want this. Okay, give me recovery. I'm over that. I want something new for myself. But until you can understand the actual pieces and then put them into place, it's going to be tough. You're really just going to be feeling your way through it. So if someone asks you, how do you develop your habits and routines? You're like, well, how do I? Unless you already know what they are. So like all this stuff, I try and give this information so eventually you can zoom out and see this picture I'm putting together with all these different pieces of like your support system, your coping skills, your habits and routines, your self-care, like any therapy, how's your physical health, and if you're any withdrawal, like how that MAT and stuff is for, like putting all these, so many different things, but putting them all together. And then once I can kind of work on these different areas one piece at a time, and you really get your feet under you, eventually I want to create relapse proof individuals that even when one piece does drop out, I have so many other that I've stabilized and put together that here we are, we can make our way through it. And I've had loads of different challenges and setbacks in recovery. Like that doesn't mean you don't have challenges and issues. That's not how recovery works. But my ability to adapt, my ability to problem solve, my ability to understand and recognize my resources and opportunities, this is what I've worked on, that gives me the confidence that no matter what happens, that I'll be able to maintain it, at least still in recovery, not using. And with that, lastly, thank you. I appreciate you for watching this video. Hopefully you find it helpful and informative. And for any private coaching inquiries, you can either email me, FrancisP at premiumpersonaldevelopment.com, or go to my website, and I'll put the link in the comp below. I'm actually going to put, I think it was the link for the recovery resources from SAMHSA in here as well, in the link below. All right, thank you. Have a great day.